Tennessee, Mid-Tennessee, near Mid-Tennessee State University, MTSU. And a group of people that I've been visiting for at least 3 lifetimes. And they're very nice devotees, and I haven't been able to go there because of you know why. But we're joining virtually. And then there's people in the room here in our local Phoenix community, and I'm sure there's some devotees that are virtually attending from other places. We've been discussing the prayers of Lord Brahma, that's the image on the screen, to Lord Krishna. Canto 10, Chapter 14, and it follows Chapter 12 and Chapter 13. So I'm not going to do a little mini summary of 12 and 13, other than saying Krishna is presently 4 years old. 1 whole year is spent manifesting himself as each one of the calves and cowherd boys, so that he can fulfill the desire of the mothers, fathers, and the cows to have Krishna as their son or their calf. And that 1 year that passed on the earthly realm was just a short while, some moments or whatever the duration is not clear. But on Brahma's time, where Brahma had, after having stolen the calves and cowherd boys in order to examine the limits of Krishna's mystic powers, Krishna showed him there is no limit, there's details. Very amazing exhibition of unlimitedness of the source of everything. And Brahma has been offering his prayers after fainting, seeing what he saw. The emphasis has been on the unknowable, because he wanted to know the limit of Krishna's mystic powers, and the answer is one cannot know the limit. He cannot understand Krishna's form. He cannot understand Krishna's happiness. He wants to know those things. He's giving credit to the bhakti process as a means by which Krishna, recognizing the devotion within his devotee, he may reveal himself, as he revealed himself to a large degree to Brahma. Then he makes some comparisons with yogis that may also achieve the spiritual world after long endeavor, but the emphasis goes to those that do achieve that, to their hearing the glories of the personality of Godhead from him or his dear devotees, and then they can perfect their yoga practice by that attraction to Krishna and engaging in service to him. He's spoken strongly against the process of speculative knowledge as a means of knowing transcendence, or for that matter, the means of knowing anything. But certainly one cannot know transcendence by speculative knowledge, although persons try. And rather, the bhakti process, not only one can know, at least to a portion, to a degree, the unknowable, but one can even conquer the unconquerable, because one of the names of Krishna is Ajita, and the verse that we spoke about twice. He who is unconquerable becomes conquered by the devotion of the pure devotion of the pure devotee. Krishna gives himself to that person. So That so far, we've managed to cover the first 7 of about 60 verses from Brahma's prayers, and a whole set of them go together. So in the course of this visit, we'll hear them quickly. But these introductory verses are very important. We're going to be hearing text 8, another really well-known verse in all of our favorite verses. Tat tenu kampam susamik shimano, that verse, that's text 8. So here's a little introduction to what we're going to be doing. Brahma declares, this is just a summary, you have unlimited qualities, and each of them are expandable to an unlimited degree, yet the impersonalist does not and cannot realize these qualities. That's a little summary of what the previous verse was saying. A little teaser. Try to conceive of what is unlimitedly beautiful. What does that mean? How beautiful is unlimitedly beautiful? How attractive is unlimitedly attractive, the all-attractive? I mean, I'm looking at the wall in front of me, and there's a very attractive painting of Radha and Krishna and 4 of the gopis, and they're very, very attractive. The all-attractive, Krishna's meaning of Krishna's name is all-attractive. So again, Brahma is seeing and has the realization of this 4-year-old looking boy is the source of everything. And amongst everything, he's the source of all beauty. He's the source of everything, unlimited qualities that expand unlimitedly. How compassionate is unlimitedly compassionate. It's inconceivable. He now declares, I wish to describe both the internal and external activities of bhakti. Now this 8th verse ends a section, and it begins, the 9th verse begins another section. Here's the 8th verse. We can say it together. Tattena kampam susamikshamano bojana evatma kritam vipakam Vitagvapurvir vidadhan namaste Jivetayo mukti sade sadayaka. I did this color-coded because the words in Sanskrit have their English translation. Like susamik shamano. It's a nice phrase. Earnestly. Tate nukampam. Susamik shamano. Earnestly. Anukampam, anukampam, waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy. This word anukampa is a nice word. Well, here's a couple of examples of where anukampa is used. Krishna says in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, unto those who are constantly engaged in worshiping me, out of my anukampa, I give them the knowledge by which they can come to me. He's compassionate, and he directs that compassion especially, or the fullness of his compassion is directed to those who wish to have that relationship with him through loving service. Or another place is where Prahlad Maharaj says the mercy of Lord Nrsingadev that was bestowed upon him was a mercy that even the goddess of fortune had never received by his touch of the paw of Lord Nrsingadev on his head. And he's considering himself the recipient of special anukampa, special causeless mercy. So the waiting for one to bestow one's causeless mercy is earnestly waiting, anu susamikshamano, Bhujana evatma kritam vipakam. Bhujana, patiently suffering. The situation is, Brahma just made a big boo-boo. More than a boo-boo, he made a big offense. The big offense was a double offense. And one was criminal. You don't kidnap children. That's a crime. And the calves, because they're little boys, this was calves. You don't steal someone's property. But he did it. And even to complicate things or make it worse, he interrupted Krishna's pastimes. So he knows he's going to get some reaction. And this verse is indicating he's ready. He's not asking Krishna, please reduce the penalty. Whatever it is that's due to come to me by my misdeeds, I will patiently suffer the reaction. Bhujana evatma kritam vipakam. And then, all the while, offering respectful obeisances with heart, words, and body. Hrid, vag, vapu. Vapu means body, vak means words, hrid means heart. Offering respectful obeisances, namaste, with heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. And I put in really big letters, Jiveta. We'll see why that's in big letters. It's something that Jiva Goswami writes in his commentary. We'll get there. And Sadhyabhak, anyone that's heard Srila Prabhupada give lectures on this verse, he spends a fair amount of time on the Sadhyabhak. Sadhyabhak is one who, when the son inherits the property of the father. That's a law. It's a custom, but it's also a law. And that means the son also inherits the debts of his father. But whatever is the property of the father, it goes to the elder son. All he has to do is survive the father. And the elder son inherits the property of the father. So who is Brahma's father? Vishnu. Garbhadakshay Vishnu. So I will inherit the property's father just by living my life in devotion to you for the duration. And then I'll inherit the kingdom of God. I mean, it's not explicitly said, but that's the implication, is implicit. And that's his rightful claim. So how are we entitled to go back to Godhead? Of course, our mother and father may not be Lord Vishnu, but ultimately the grandfather, Brahma, is called Pitamaha, because he's the father of fathers, but he also has a father. In just listening to Prabhupada explaining this to an audience in Bombay, when you trace genealogy, you go through someone and someone's father and someone's father, and then there's the original father, the grandfather, the father of the dynasty or the genealogical line. And that's Brahma. And then Brahma has a father. So we're sons of God too, in other words. And to inherit the property of the Father, that's the kingdom of God, we just have to carry on in this way. There's misdeeds, likely unknown. What misdeeds we've done, likely unknown. But for misdeeds, just like the story of King Nriga, I'm having a nice time with the devotees in China we're going through chapter after chapter after chapter of the 10th canto because they don't know Krishna stories, but they really like Krishna stories. So 2 chapters ago was the story of King Nriga. And boy, was he pious. Boy, was he pious. He gave so much charity you can't count. I mean, asankhata, of cows and wealth, and he did it every day, and he must have had a big herd because he was giving so many cows and so much wealth. There's a nice story, I think it's from Vishnu Purana, where he had a benediction from a Brahmana who he had a deity, and he wanted King Nriga to build a temple for his deity. So he built a temple for his deity. And then he wanted ornaments for his deity. He gave him ornaments for his deity. And he wanted land so he could provide necessities for his deity. The king provided land so he could grow and have supplies for his deity. And the Brahmin was so pleased, he said, very soon you will see the personality of Godhead face to face. So that went into his heart, he accepted, and sure enough, that benediction of the Brahmana, Krishna upheld. Because Krishna gave his darshan to King Nriga, but there was a little bump in the road. The little bump in the road was he made a boo-boo. It wasn't as bad as Brahma's, but in the course of one day's giving out cows, he gave a cow to a Brahmana, and somehow that cow got away from the Brahmana and went back in the herd, and he gave it to another, same cow, to another Brahmana. And then the Brahmanas had a squabble. It's my cow. No, it's my cow. So they went to the king to settle the squabble. And he pleaded with them, take 100,000 cows and give me this one cow back. No. You gave a cow. It's my cow. And so they both left angry. Padma Purana tells the same story where it says, no, Mahabharata tells the same story where the Brahmanas cursed him. And it's in Ramayana also, because King Nriga was the son, according to the Bhagavatam at least, King Nriga was the son of Ikshvaku. In Mahabharata, he was the brother of Ikshvaku. So it's taken as a different yuga cycle, a different King Nriga. But in any case, he was very charitable, and he made this boom. So at the end of his life, the Yamadutas came and brought him before Yamaraj. And Yamaraj said, you're so pious, flawlessly, with this one mistake, you did a fantastic job. So you're actually eligible to attain the kingdom of heaven. But you made this boo-boo. You took the property of a Brahmin and gave it to another Brahmana. I know it was a mistake, but you're going to have to be responsible for that. Because it was karma kanda. It wasn't bhakti. It was karma kanda. He was giving because he wanted something. He wanted heavenly, and he eventually got it. So the king reasoned, well, let me get the misfortune out of the way, that I can just enjoy. Very well. You will become a lizard. So the way the Bhagavatam says, he felt himself becoming a lizard. wonder what that feels like. And he was at the bottom of a well, and it was a really big well, because the duration of time, this is a detail. Here's a detail. Tell me if you like details. I like details. With Krishna Lila especially. According to Rupa Goswami, Lord Ramachandra appears in the 24th Yuga cycle. And Krishna appears in which Yuga cycle? Of Vaivasvatamanu? Come on. 28th. 28th, right. 28th. 28th. So there's 3 Yuga cycles separating. When Ramchandra performed his pastimes, and a Yuga cycle is a long time, 4,320,000 years. Times 2 because it's night. It's a long time between when Ramchandra appeared. So Nriga was at the bottom of a well for a long time. And his body had become, according to the 10th canto, big like a mountain. And some of the boys, Pradumna and others, were out in the forest doing what boys do. They were having a good time. And then they came thirsty, looked for some water. They looked in the well and they saw the giant lizard. So they felt compassion. They tried to get the lizard out. Nothing worked. They went and told Daddy, Krishna, this is what happened. So Krishna smiled. He knew what to do. He went to the well. And Krishna extended his arm, because he has mystic powers, right? And he touched the lizard, and the lizard instantly transformed into a demigod. Nriga became a lizard, the lizard became a demigod. And Krishna's omniscient, but he said, who are you, and how'd you get into this position? So he told the story of the cows and, his charities and things like that. And he then asked permission from Krishna to go to the heavenly planets, which is what he was destined to go after finishing the reaction for taking the property of a Brahmana and giving it to another Brahmana, although it was a mistake. Now, I'm narrating that story because this is about mistakes too. We sometimes make mistakes. I remember my 8th grade science teacher said, I remember 15 years ago I made a mistake. Everybody laughed. We all make mistakes. And even unintentional mistakes, especially when it's connected to Dharma, we're responsible for. I mean, even other ones, we're responsible for mistakes. We're held accountable. The laws of justice, the laws of Dharma are infallible. Now, there is an exception. What's the exception? Bhakti can wipe the slate. But King Nriga was not so much of a devotee. He was largely a karmakandi, follower of the Vedas, doing charity. Somewhere in there was this faith that he heard from the Brahmana, one day you'll see the personality of Godhead. So there was some attraction, but it's kind of faint. And the predominant mood, mixed devotion, the predominant mood was, I want to go to heaven. Now, Brahma is a much more elevated devotee. Well, what Brahma did was much more severe. Kidnapping and interrupting Krishna's pastimes. That's not just a boo-boo, that's an offense. I mean, taking the property of a Brahmin is an offense also, but interrupting Krishna's pastimes is a big offense. So he knew he's going to get a reaction. Yeah, something like Maharaj Pariksit knew he was going to get a reaction for that offense to the sage, putting a dead snake around his neck. He didn't know what it was, but he knew something was going to come. And his response was similar to Brahma's response. Whatever it is, I accept it. He didn't try to counteract it. He did lots of things he didn't do. Didn't get depressed, didn't beat himself up, he didn't do lots of things. He just accepted there's going to be reaction, whatever the reaction is, I accept it. That's what this verse is saying. And in our lives, this verse is so important. It's quoted many times in the Bhagavatam. It's quoted twice in Bhagavad Gita purports. It's like a favorite verse for devotees that have problems. We all have problems because it's the nature of the place where we are. And the nature of the place where we are is there's duality. Just like second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Duality. Sometimes you're in Chicago, sometimes you're in Phoenix. Chicago is cold, and Phoenix is 95 degrees. Sometimes it's, day, and sometimes it's night, sometimes it's pleasure, sometimes it's pain, sometimes it's honor, sometimes it's dishonor, sometimes this and sometimes that, because it's just the nature of the place. It's not going to change because you're a nice Prabhu. It's the nature of the place. According to another verse later in Brahma Samhita, Yas Twindra Gopa Matavendra Mahosvakarma Bandhanurupam Palabhajanam Atunoti Karma Nirdahita Kintu Chabakti Bhajam Govindamadi Purusham Samaham Bhajami. According to Lord Brahma, in that set of prayers, from Indra, it's right in the verse, yes, Tvindra Gopa, the Indra Gopa germ, up to Lord Indra, from the smallest insignificant creature down to the king of heaven. They all, and everyone in between, receives their appropriate karma. Good deeds get good results, bad deeds get bad results, mixed gets mixed, and the justice is infallible. And then there's the exception. What's the exception? Bhajanamatunoti. Bhajanamatunoti is were those that are engaged in devotional service, because we know from the last verse of chapter 6 Bhagavad Gita, the word bhaj, the dhatu bhaj, is the root of bhakti. So wherever you see bhaj or bhajan or bhajate mam ananya bhaj, is bhakti, devotional service. Those who engage in devotional service, there's another set of rules. Karma doesn't apply. So what applies? Well, why do bad things sometimes happen to devotees? Well, according to the verse, and I like Bhaktisiddhanta's translation, Krishna acts differently with the devotees. And in this case, it's Brahma, he's a devotee. He didn't become a lizard like King Nriga. And nothing bad happened. He got his special favor. He got his question answered, like, what's the limit? The answer is there's no limit. He saw the original form of Krishna, which according to the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita is very rarely seen, right? After the universal form, Arjuna said, please take this away. So Krishna showed his four-arm form, then he showed his two-arm form and said, it's really rare to see this one. Brahma understood. What he experienced was mercy. He was expecting to get spanked or get a reaction. He got mercy. Big time mercy. But he's ready for whatever reaction, whatever punishment Krishna wanted. He's ready. His determination, which should be our determination, even when some misfortune comes our way, at least it looks like misfortune, but it's, according to Brahma Samhita, it's Krishna taking away from the very root, the root cause our material existence. What's the root cause of material existence? Bhakti Siddhanta gives two things: nescience, or ignorance, and evil desires. According to Buddhism, the class in Buddhism quiz, the root cause of suffering is desire. Desire. And the way to get rid of desire, how do you become desireless? You do two things. You frame your life in goodness, like compassion, charity, nonviolence, the little incubation chamber of goodness, and then you put in the middle of that incubation chamber meditation. Meditation on what? Nothing. And when you're at that place where you have no more material desire, what's there? Nothing, or nothingness. Business finished. Nirvana. Now what's on the other side of nirvana? Krishna. So for Vaishnava teachings, the root cause of suffering is, anyone that's heard Prabhupada's lectures, you know the answer. Ignorance. The root cause of suffering is ignorance. The original ignorance is ignoring Krishna, and all other little baby ignorances come from mama ignorance, ignoring Krishna. So the cure, well, you can say knowledge is the cure for ignorance, but real knowledge is to acknowledge Krishna. Otherwise, knowledge is incomplete. It's insufficient. So turn the light on, but then the light might go out again. But you make it that connection with Krishna again, and knowledge is there, and the light doesn't go out again. Yes, that's what real enlightenment is. It's not nothingness or nirvana. That's what's on the other side of nirvana. So you stay in that orientation. That's what this verse is saying. Just stay oriented like that. Like what? Dedicate your heart, words, and body to Krishna. Hrit Bhag Vapu. Don't comment it's body-minded words, but it's here, it's Hrit, Bhak, and Vapu. You just get, subtle, internal and external dedication in service to Krishna, faithfully, for your life. And let the good times and the bad times come and go, because it's a place of duality, and sometimes and sometimes. We don't engage ourselves in short-term solutions. We deal with circumstances as they arise, in responsible, as best we can manner, but that's not our occupation. Our occupation is staying fixed in the service mood of Krishna. And one who does that, you go back to Godhead, or you inherit the property of your father, or it's your rightful claim. Krishna ensures that. So let's do the verse again. It's a nice verse. It's a good one to remember, especially when you get kicked in the shins, or someone steps on your toe, or something awful happens, that something hurts, as they say in stress management. Life throws a rock at you and it hurts. So when that happens, it's a good verse. Together? Tate pam susamikshamano ujjana eva tam vipapam vidbhagapurvir viditan namaste jiveta yomukti sadayaka. So misfortune that comes our way, some people think it's just fate, and we're in the hands of fate. Look in the crystal ball and see what's fated for you because it's going to happen because it's fated for you. But it's not quite like that. The events that happen are often outside of our good and the bad, both. It's outside of our ability to, make the steering wheel turn us in a different direction or turn us in a good direction instead. We do what we can do in a responsible manner. But when good fortune comes, it comes. When ill fortune comes, it comes. Here's a nice similar statement, different but similar. This is a painting of King Prithu, who was churned from the body of Vena, and he's now being placed on the throne in place of Vena. And as you see, Lord Vishnu is there on his right side or our left. Lord Shiva is there. That Brahma is there. There's a big celebration. He's being installed as a king. And Lord Vishnu came directly to that sacrificial arena where the installation was going on. And Lord Vishnu spoke, you please me very much by all of your wonderful words of glorification. Now you please accept some benediction from me. And he says something really nice. Here's the Sanskrit. Yatacharat bala hitam pita swayam. He says, just like a father not waiting for the son's demand, does everything for the benefit of the son, please bestow upon me whatever you think is best for me. Nice, huh? Kind of unconditional. I'm not going to ask you for something. If you feel something is going to be good for me, beneficial for me, then that'll be very nice. And sometimes, we'll hear shortly, sometimes a caregiving person will administer, this is from Vishwanath, sometimes a caregiving person, a father, will give his son nice sweet milk. And sometimes the father will give his son bitter nimba juice. And the son is thinking, oh, why are you punishing me? But there may be a purpose behind giving bitter nimba juice. So it's not kindness and unkindness, it's a loving father doing what's best for the son. So this verse, according to Vishwanath, is saying that the disposition of Brahma is the same as the disposition of Prithu, whatever you feel is best for me. Another nice example of this painting is, somehow the image is small, but it's King Chitraketu, that Vimana up on the left, coming in for a landing, where Mount Kailash, there's Lord Shiva giving some katha, and we see in the audience there's Vyasadeva, there's Narada Muni, there's many great sages, and lo and behold, Parvati is on his lap while he's giving this nice dissertation. And Chitraketu happens to come to pay a visit. He has become such an elevated Paramahamsa that he has a friendship with Lord Shiva. He's not a worshipper, he has friendship. and he's coming to pay his respects to his friend. And when he sees the situation, Parvati's on his lap and he's giving this talk to all these great sages. He makes a remark which Parvati misunderstands. Oh, look at this. He's speaking with Parvati sitting on his lap. His intention was that only a person so elevated as Lord Shiva could remain undisturbed in a circumstance like this. She took it that Chitraketu was criticizing. So before he even came in for a landing, she shook her finger at him and cursed him. You have offended Lord Shiva. You should become a demon. She said a few other things. And so he descended from his vimana, stood before her with folded palms. He didn't protest. Hey, you misunderstood. It wasn't like that. It was like this. Hey. He did explain. He was honoring Lord Shiva, but somehow she's misunderstood. There must be a plan of the Lord, so I accept. His mind didn't move. His words didn't move. His body didn't move. It's something, like Amar Jambarish, when that fiery demon came rushing at him. What would you do if just somebody threw an object at you? What would you do? You don't have to think about it. Your hands go up. His hands were by his side. He's a Kshatriya. And there comes this thing. Kill him. His body didn't move. His mind didn't move. Same as Chitraketu. How is that possible? Because he was fully Krishna conscious. He circumambulated Parvati and went off and became a demon. And then Lord Shiva scolded her. You say he was the offender. You are the offender. Just see. Then that celebrated verse, Narayana Paraksarge Na Kutaschana Bibhyati Svarga Apavarga Narakeshu. Svarga, heaven. Naraka, hell. Apavarga, liberation. A person like Chitraketu, they're so absorbed in Narayana, to them it's the same. Good fortune, ill fortune is the same. Because there's a plan of the Lord, and whatever the plan of the Lord is, that's my plan. Now that's very elevated, we're not there, but this is speaking of the lesson that Brahma is teaching, and we can try to understand the lesson and try to move in the direction of have such strong conviction in the protection of the personality of Godhead that when misfortune comes, we're just fine. We deal with it. Brahma was ready to deal with it. The worst thing that happened to Brahma was when he finished all of his prayers, Krishna didn't say anything. He didn't say, see you later. He didn't say Hari Bol. He didn't say anything. Because he wanted to get back and finish his lunch with the cowboys. More important to Krishna, it was a mild reprimand by being silent. Brahma understood. Not like, hey, this is pretty good, I'm off the hook. But Krishna wasn't pleased. But Krishna relieved him of this mistake, this pride, this challenging spirit. And now he is fully situated in fixed devotion to Krishna. Same thing happened. Only one more example. This is King Indra. The whole Govardhan Leela had a major purpose. There was several major purposes, but one of them was Krishna didn't want He doesn't like pride. He didn't like pride in the hearts of his devotees. And Indra had a whole bunch. So Krishna very kindly relieved him of his pride. This is very similar to that verse from Brahma Samhita. Tada bhajanamato noti. Anything that's covering our real bhakti, Krishna very kindly takes it away. When he shows special mercy, he takes it away. And pride is a big problem. Pride is a big problem. That's a whole topic. So pride's a big problem. So Krishna, look how relaxed Krishna is. He took away Indra's pride. He didn't chastise Indra. Look what Indra did. Indra didn't become a lizard. But Indra's a devotee, a mixed devotee with pride. So he took away his pride. And he did many other things with that pastime as well. Here's what Prabhupada writes in Nectar Devotion about this particular verse. This statement of Srimad Bhagavatam should be the guide of all devotees. That is the only solace. If the devotee passes his days in that spirit, it is certain that he is going to be promoted to the abode of the Lord. That's expecting the Lord's mercy. Chapter 10. Jiva Goswami writes, to get this sadaya bhak, all you have to do is jiveta. Jiveta means you stay alive, and stay alive in devotion, in your relationship with Krishna. That's the message. That's what this text 8 is saying. And actually I wanted to go further, but I got a little enthusiastic and started telling the King Riga story and things like that. Here's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, his commentary on this verse. Now that other processes have been rejected and bhakti accepted as the process to attain Bhagavan, the process of bhakti is described. The devotee understands that the happiness and distress that he experiences due to performing bhakti and committing aparadhs are the mercy of the Lord. It is like that father who sometimes makes his child drink milk and sometimes makes him drink bitter nima juice, and sometimes embraces and kisses him and sometimes beats him. The devotee thinks that this is the arrangement of the Lord working for his benefit. Quote, the Lord knows and I do not know. Karma and time have no effect on the devotee, so it is his personal arrangement. By his mercy, sometimes he gives me happiness and sometimes he gives me distress, considering how to engage me in his service. Now, it's easy to say those things, and then when the distress comes, it's another thing. But that's the transcendental shelter that's available to all of us. Those 6 Goswami Murtis in the other room, they're really beautiful. Very beautiful. Nice inspiration. Has that Murtiwala made them for anyone else or just for you?
By the time we ordered, I think it was the first one. And many of the devotees of then from where did you get can be, I'm not sure.
Marble? Can you make a photograph of the deity? Because the photograph that they're made of, I have, but not the Murtis. My reason for asking specifically is I've been giving seminar, and now it's in the middle of the seminar to the Chinese devotees on the 6 Goswamis. Like each class is 2.5 hours on each one of the 6 Goswamis. I've been, and I've been by doing that, I've become very appreciative of how they are helping us achieve the position of Krishna, Radha and Krishna's eternal association. It's right from Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Sadhana Siddha Rupena Swarup Siddha something. So I don't know the verse. His advice that the teaching of Lord Chaitanya is to give love of Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. That teaching of Lord Chaitanya is given to us through the 6 Goswamis. In describing nectar devotion, the celebrated nectar devotion series that Prabhupada gave in Vrindavan, 1972, during Kartik month. And then he continued after he left. He went to Bombay, then he went to Calcutta. So in that series, I mentioned in this morning class, Prabhupada explains that the other processes, including the beginning stages of sadhana bhakti, are like a jump start for a car. He didn't know the term. He was asking what's the term, and so those of you that know a little bit about standard transmissions as opposed to automatic transmissions, if the starter is not working, you can start the car anyways. And how do you start the car if the starter isn't working? You get a bunch of people behind, and they push the car up to a certain speed, and then the driver pops the clutch. Because when you're pushing, he has to have the clutch released, but then he drops the clutch and gives gas. And then boom, 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 then the car, Prabhupada made that sound. Boom, boom, boom. The car runs on its own speed. But the purpose of the pushing is to get the car running at its own speed. So he's explaining that sadhana bhakti is to end all the other processes that are preludes to sadhana bhakti, everything that's auspicious, etc., it's like jumpstart. To get one to the stage where the car is running at its own speed, or its own strength, its own energy. And that's spontaneous devotional service. Our path is the path of Raga Marg. And the position, one of the requirements of Raga Marg is to let go of other dependencies, like expecting something from something. I do this because I get that. That's the entrepreneurial or the manic mood. You do business with God. I'll do this and you give me that. Om Jai Jagadisha Hare. But when that's set aside, there's only one thing. And when that only one thing is actually in place, then it's spontaneous. All the other things are regulative to get one to the spontaneous. This little teaching in this verse 8 is the spontaneous stage. Unconditional. You can do with me what you like, or what Prithu says to Lord Vishnu, like a loving father, whatever you feel is best. Even if it's something that's uncomfortable, if that's what's best, no problem. Now, what do we know what's best? And that's what is being said here. By His mercy, He sometimes gives me happiness and sometimes gives me distress, considering how to engage me in His service. The Lord knows and I do not know. Later in his prayers, Brahma is going to marvel at the kind of love of the resident of Vrindavan. He marvels like Uddhava marvels and says, my greatest fortune would be if I could just take birth somewhere in Vrindavan and have the dust from the people passing by touch me in the head, a blade of grass or anything. He's the topmost person in the universe, and he's looking up to the residents of Vrindavan. That's what we should be doing. He's not just like, a good bhakta. He's the topmost person in our sampradaya, and he's looking up to the Brijvasis. He feels very fortunate to have seen what he saw, the cowherd boys, the whole thing. And he goes back because he has service to do. He has to run the universe, keep everything in good order. We also have some service to do. And then the internal part is that appreciation and even hankering for the opportunity to be in the association of the Brijvasis. That's our teaching. That's the teachings of the Goswamis. Read it carefully, and you'll run into it every time. That's that platform of Ragamark, the spontaneous devotional service. Okay, I've kind of got a little distracted here. It's 11 minutes after the hour, and we haven't even had some questions. So because this class was intended to be for the devotees in Tennessee, Nitai Gursundar, does anybody in your group want to discuss some topic? We're trying to adjust dials and things here so we can hear you better. Say it again.
Sure.
Okay. You're on Zoom. Okay. You can unmute yourself, Zoomers. Yeah. Speak a little loud, close to the microphone.
Went to heavenly planet.
That's right. Well, he had a desire, and that desire previously, as King Riga, he had a desire, a heavenly destination desire, and so it was reciprocated with. Just like, not the same. His attainment wasn't the same as Dhruva's. Dhruva attained to the pole star, but before he went to the pole star, he went back and ruled his father's kingdom for 60,000 years. That's a long time to rule. So King Riga had a desire to become a demigod. Now, after becoming a demigod and staying in whatever planet he went to, likely he went back to Godhead. But he had that desire, and it wasn't gone. It was still there. There's a similar, just like those who were liberated by Krishna didn't always go back to Godhead. For example, the serpent that was swallowing Nanda Maharaj. It was a Vidyadhara, and he came out of that serpent body looking very celestial, with ornaments and glowing helmets and this and that. And he went back to Vidyadhara Loka. But he had become purified by the touch of Krishna's foot. So he became a pure devotee, but he went back to Vidyadhara Loka. And that, went on Sankirtan up there, I guess. He gave his association to those personalities. The destination very much depends. Now the Kuvera and Manigriva, they went back to being sons of Kuvera. They had become purified. So same King Durga. He had become purified, but he still had some residual desire, and it was fulfilled. The verse is meant to do that. Yes, yes. Well, there's a relationship with Krishna that has been forgotten, and to be alive is to restore it. And even if it's presently in the moment not fully vibrant, you pursue it because it's the goal of your life. And it's the many things that are meaningful in life, but you make that the topmost meaningful thing in your life, and that's Jiveta. You may still be very far from that attainment, but you make it important. Now, partly, uh, one of the obstacles is complacency, because we start to get a little comfortable, and then we slacken. It's common. So the Jiveta principle is don't become complacent. You make progress, and you want to make the next progress, and you want to make the next progress. And there are teachings and there are teachers to help you go the next step, go the next step. But if you become complacent, you're not going to even hear the teaching. You're not going to have the kind of regard for the teacher because it's not in the Jiveta light went out. You're interested in being comfortable until you're again uncomfortable, and then the light comes on again. So don't be complacent. That's the or proud or distracted. We're distracted. There's lots going on, and it's really easy to get attracted to things that are going on rather than the higher purpose. So deal with the stuff that's going on, but give your attention to that higher purpose and stay there. That's Jiveta. And at different stages of life, just like in the room here, there's some young students. And what's important to them is, for some period of time in their life, and then something else becomes. We all know, things keep changing. Things keep changing. Things keep changing. Things keep changing. And if we're just absorbed in what's changing and making the best of it, the higher purpose of life can just slip through our fingers, and you know what that means. Punarjanma, that's what it means. You get another time around and do the same thing all over again. That's what it means. Some eyebrows just went up. Oh boy. But if you don't want that, then make sure you stay Jiveta. Stay alive and don't become complacent and just distracted by the temporary. One of the best ways, good association. Be in association of those who are alive and are continuing throughout their life to strive to go the next step. Stay in good association with those people. And read Prabhupada's books. It's there. It's all there. The instructions are there. If your light's on, you get the instruction. Anyone else out there, or we're going to go to our room in here? Nitai Sundar, should I go to the room here?
Anyone else, please? This is the last year of the Bharat. I don't see any.
Okay.
Anyone.
We got a little portable microphone. It's cute. We're going to pass it around.
Nobody else.
You're next.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
You may have spoken about this already, but just from reading the projection, it's saying the aparadha, and the result of the aparadha is also the kripa of Bhagwan. Is that so?
I just cut and pasted what he wrote, or at least how it's translated what he wrote.
Yeah.
But the offense itself is not mercy. That one gets a reaction for the offense, that's mercy. The slap on the wrist is mercy. It's not cruelty. Letting us know, like Brahma, he's, I made a big mistake, and something's going to come. Like Parikshit, I made a big mistake, something's going to come, and I'm ready. So it's not the aparad is mercy, it's the reaction to aparad is mercy.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the wonderful class. So you talked about moksha. We hear this term so often. It's very loosely used. So I want to ask you what real moksha means.
Aha! That's answered in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10. Because in Canto 2, Chapter 10, the 10 topics of the Bhagavatam are listed. One of the 10 is moksha. And then Shukadeva Goswami gives a definition of moksha. Svarupena vyavastati. Svarupena vyavastati means be situated in, and svarupa is one's form. What moksha is activities engaged in your spiritual form. Muktir hitvanyata rupam svarupena vyavastati. That's the whole phrase. Prabhupada repeated it over and over, but you can find it to get some detail. Canto 2, Chapter 10, verse something like 6 and 7, something in that range. Muktir, or moksha, muktir, hitvanyata rupam, svarupena vyavastati.
Thank you very much.
You'll find it also in in Chapter 6, Bhagavad Gita, verses something like 20 through 23. Prabhupada gives that phrase. It's Krishna is describing to Arjuna the Dhyan Yoga process, and he, in the purport, Prabhupada uses that phrase and explains it.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So
Hare Krishna.
very timely class, I think, at least for me. The question is, when we understand that life distresses come, sometimes it comes like it's raining, and in that situations, how do you get realization like described here, and how do you bring your
Disturbed mind back to
yes,
stability.
yes, how do you bring back that while its onslaught is going on?
You have a price to pay. And the price that you have to pay is faith. And when faith becomes matured, then you pay the price. Because then it's like a ship. that's sailing across the sea. I don't know too much. I've never been a sailor, but I know that they put weight in the hull of the ship called ballast. And it can't, because when storms come, if there's no weight in the base of the ship, it moves like a piece of wood in the waves. And when there's ballast, then it's more stable. So faith is that faith and humility in your relationship with Krishna. That's shelter taking. You don't take shelter if you're not humble, if you don't have faith. So those are qualities. Then you engage in sadhana bhakti when it's not a stormy time, or it's less stormy, and stay grounded, so that when the storms come, you're ready. And when the beginning is same as Bhagavad Gita, you tolerate the duality, you become situated neutral to the duality, you become situated above the duality in stages. So it's like a spiritual trajectory. So how will you become spiritually elevated? When you're spiritually elevated, you can look at the duality and you smile. Because that's all it is. It's just duality. Wait a while and it changes. Distress is like that. It wait a while and it changes.
So all of the devotees are. So all of the devotees love and worship Krishna. However, how did the devotees show their love to Krishna before Krishna came to this world in the Dwapar Yuga?
I don't understand the question. Do you understand the question?
I think he's asking, so he's
Give him the
Krishna
microphone.
came,
Take the microphone.
I think he's asking that Krishna came in Dwapar Yuga. So how did the devotees worship him as Krishna before that?
That's your question? Oh. Well, not only came in Dwapar Yuga, but he came in 28th Yuga cycle of Vaivasvatamano. Now, what about all the other Yuga cycles and all the other Manus, for that matter? Not just before Dwapar Yuga, in which Krishna appeared. Bhakti is universal. It's within the heart of every living being. You've heard that teaching, right? Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sajikavamula. That bhakti is already within. So, bhakti towards Krishna, even before Krishna appeared, persons knew about Krishna. Scholars, people that know in the Vedas knew about, because he comes in cycles. So they may not have had specifically Krishna Bhakti, they may have had Krishna Bhakti, but by the same method, by hearing about him, by remembering him, by offering prayers to him, the 9 processes of Bhakti before he appeared and after he disappeared. Or some other form of the Lord. Like a favorite is Lord Nrsimhadev. Or another favorite is Lord Ramachandra. So it's one form of the Lord or another form of the Lord becoming attracted by some form of the Lord and becoming devoted to that person. Hearing about them, remembering them, associating with those that are engaged in worship of them. That's how. By the 9 processes of bhakti. It spiked a whole bunch when Krishna came. But it was there before. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Brothers and sisters. Can you give us throw some light on how to become a pure devotee of the Lord?
How to become a pure devotee? Piece of cake. By Anyabi Lasha to Shanyam. You know the verse, right? You kick out certain things and you accept other things. The some things you kick out are the dirty things, or the things that aren't going to get you to Krishna. Karma again aren't going to get you to Krishna. And there's other things, there's subsets of those things. And then you accept those things that are favorable. And keep in good association with those that are engaging that way. Ideally, those that are more advanced than you in that regard. Keep close association as much as your circumstance of life permits. Look up to them and keep close association with them. We have our pure devotee, let's say acharyas, and they're providing messages all the time. And their writings are filled with those messages. And then we can take shelter of that sound vibration of those messages and be pulled up. The greatest obstacle to becoming a pure devotee is we're not so eager to become a pure devotee. We're more eager to get comfortable. But pure devotee is beyond comfortable. It's okay to be comfortable, but don't become just interested in being comfortable. Be interested in being whatever it takes to get. According to Rupa Goswami, and that one answer to your question is there's one requirement, and that's greed. Lovyam. Greed is a bad thing, but greed for becoming a pure devotee is a good thing. Greed for being in your relationship with Krishna. So you go notch it down a little bit and just say, become eager. Or notch it up a little bit, say become enthusiastic. Go back down a little bit, become inquisitive. Go in that trajectory according to your capacity, and you stay with it. Don't become complacent. Stay with it. And then you find things that are going to nourish and enhance that eagerness or enthusiasm or greed, and you spend time there. You invest energy in Sat, and you let go of Asat.
Sometimes it becomes difficult to understand the difference between feeling cheated versus really feeling the. How do we manage that kind of situation?
Feeling cheated versus feeling connection. That's your question.
Yes.
Well, we Guru Sadhu Shastra. We go to those authorities and we hold our feelings up to that light. And then we can get a sense of, do we have a right reading on our feelings, and we maybe need to readjust our feelings in light of Guru Sadhu Shastra.
So it's the heart that tells you whether you're on the right path.
Well, the heart tells you, but you have to get it confirmed. Because
then you are afraid that you can make an offense because some of the exotic personalities.
so we don't want to do that, but we also want to have close relationships. If we have close relationships, there's a chance you're going to make some offense. So now what are you going to do? Keep a close relationship and, guard against offense. Hold your Guru Sadhu Shastra life. And, if someone, supposing someone, unintent, a sincere someone, a really sincere someone, says something, does something that's not appropriate, it's easily overlooked because they're sincere. And then when you see that sincerity, okay, some correction will come. That's okay. Then when there's sincerity, then it's not a problem. So the main thing is this eagerness or sincerity about purpose.
Oh, Krishna Maharaj, thank you. So basically, it's the sincere desire, have the right intention to connect, to really want to.
Then we need knowledge. We need good association to get knowledge. We need genuine knowledge. One can be sincere. One can be sincerely foolish.
And the desire. So I know I've heard of Prabhupada's lectures saying that we need how important desire. The desire is to be engaged, to be engaged in Krishna consciousness, to come to Krishna consciousness. The desire says once the desire is there, then things will manifest.
Well, the doors will open, and then we have to keep going through those doors. Things will manifest. It makes it sound like voila, but there's work to be done. We can't have to go through those other stages of removing unwanted, and then there's look at all that other stuff and remove that unwanted, look at all that other stuff and keep going. When the light's on, that eagerness is there, and that then you have to keep going. It happens, but you have to keep going. There's
The right intention.
Yes, and effort, and practical. I want to please Krishna. Don't become complacent with that one. And doors will open. And sometimes you stub your toe, or sometimes it's worse. But you keep going because the intention is sincere. I want to reach Krishna. Yeah. Over here, she's got something.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the lecture. So earlier you mentioned, I think when the other devotees from there, they were asking questions, that some devotees, they get purified, but they don't go to Kunta or
Yes,
Godhead.
that was one of the
Is that because they are not qualified, or
yes, that's why.
or they don't desire?
It's both.
But if they got purified, they're still not qualified.
What does purified means? I mean, the serpent. He was a Vidyadhara who offended a Brahmana. He was offending a Brahmana. It was not good. He was beautiful. The Brahmana was not. An old man limping along, not very physically attractive, and he ridiculed him. The Brahmana said, "You're a serpent. You become a serpent. You're envious." He became a serpent. Now he became purified by Krishna's touching him, but so he went back to Vidyadhara Loka as a pure devotee to preach Krishna consciousness. This is what happened. So he had some service to do there. In a higher state of consciousness than he was before. He became purified. Yes. And he had the affinity for being in Vidyadhara Loka in a demigod body. So that's where he went.
So he still had
His eligibility, he was lifted to the degree of his eligibility to be lifted.
he still had some
Yes.
service to do.
Yes. And still had some affinity, some, heavenly affinity. over in the corner, and I think we're ready to wrap up.
My question is, so many times, my American friends, they, when they come my home and they see and they ask this question, what are you doing? And, it's very difficult for me to simplify and say, what is bhakti? Because, when I try to explain what bhakti is, they say, okay, is that devotion? And so many times this English word doesn't describe the real meaning of the Sanskrit words. And so many times I find it very difficult to even explain what the bhakti means. It's beyond devotion. So how can I simplify and for my American friends who doesn't have the background, when we talk about karma, their definition of karma is very different from how the Vedas have described the karmas. So how do I describe bhakti to them?
Well, two things. Don't expect a quick fix. In 3 minutes, 5 minutes, you're going to give them a capsule bhakti lesson. I'm thinking it depends on your friend. That's one of my favorite answers. It depends. So you can take a big picture, or you can take a small something and take the small something and describe the small something. The small something is here's a grain of rice in my hand. Now, where did it come from? And not only grain of rice that's in my hand, where did everything come from? But let's just start with this. And if I recognize where it came from, then how do I engage this grain of rice? Engage with this grain of rice. I should acknowledge where it's come from. And then I offer it to the source from which it came. Now, the source from which it came doesn't need a grain of rice. I need the relationship with the source from which it came from, and by making an offering of that from which it came to the thing that's in my palm of my hand. That's what bhakti is. And then you expand that to the house. Here we are in my house. Where did it come from? I'm gonna enter this world without a hand, without a grain of rice, and I'm gonna leave it. So in between, how do I relate to stuff? Recognize where it came from. This is the Ishopanishad. It's all about proprietorship. And then I engage myself accepting from the source of everything what's meant for my maintenance, and don't encroach on others' things because it's for their maintenance. It's from the source of everything. And that's how I live my life in relation to the source of everything. And that's how I live my life with my neighbor. And not just, the other human beings, but the other beings, the other entities that are also being maintained by the source of everything. And that's what I'm doing. That's what my life is about. I'm trying to align myself to that which is the source of everything, and be in a relationship with that which is the source of everything, and see the things that come from that source as connected again with the source. And then you can say, let me give you an example. And you can give an example or two. Let's say I eat. So I want to make my eating connected to the source of everything. And it's one thing to say thanks. And it's another thing to take that which is given to me to maintain this body and offer it first to the source. And that's the kind of life I like to live.
Thank you, Maharaj.
But again, it depends on the person.
Yeah, a couple of friends, they are Christians, so when they come, they ask the question, that, they relate it to devotion, but bhakti is sort of like you are explaining, it's connecting to that. So
It's the root word. I mentioned this earlier. The root word for bhakti is bhaj. Dhatu. You don't have to give them a Sanskrit lesson, but the real word is senses engaged with the object of the senses in service to the master of the senses. So part of it is, where does everything come from, including me, and everything that maintains me, and everything that's, maintaining somebody else. Where does everything come from? And how to make that connection through my senses with the objects that come from a source, and connect my senses and the objects to the source with service, practical activity. That's the life that I'm living. It's practical activity. It's not just devotion, because that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. Now, how do we know how to live our life according to what's pleasing to the source? That's a good question. We have scripture. And here's it, for example. Isha Upanishad is a real good starting point for people because it's certainly consistent. They'll say, "Oh, I get it. My religion is like that too." It's the same source, not a different teaching. It may look different, but it's the same principle. So then, how come you're doing this instead of what I'm doing? Maybe you should do what I'm doing. And I am doing what you're doing.
yeah, thankfully currently we are going through Isha Upanishad in our bhakti groups.
Oh, good.
Right.
It's really good. It's really good for helping people that don't have a Vedic orientation to just understand principles.
Thank you, Maharaj. Really helpful.
Are we done? You have something, our host? You made a cake. You want me to cut it? Pizza. You want me to cut the pizza? Pastry. Whatever you want me to do, that's it, ready. Okay, we're our Nitai Sundar, our class is over for this evening. You've been very patient. We went, for a long time.
I just want to thank you for giving your mercy to us and your association to us. Hopefully, you'll be joining us in Middle Tennessee, for natural food.
You're always wanting more. Let's see.
That's our MO, Maharaj. That's our MO.
Okay. He's eager for more. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Yeah.